Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Ilove, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And we have a fantastic guest today. Her name is Stephanie Powell, and she has a whole lot of wonderful things to talk about. She is a speaker, an entrepreneur, a brand and business strategist, and an authenticity expert. She has built a successful and profitable business, and she helps her clients do the same. However, she doesn't tell you what to do. Oh, that's a woman after my own heart. Instead, she helps you figure out what is aligned and authentic to you to build your business to heights you never knew possible. Stephanie's superpower is the ability to combine the practical with the woo, which is the real secret sauce to success. And I'm sure she's going to fill us in on all of this. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Super excited.
Oh, this is wonderful. I've been looking forward to it for a really long time because I had to cancel on you, I think twice. I don't remember. So we finally got you. Life does happen, and technology doesn't always cooperate either.
Amen to that.
So, Stephanie, tell us how you got to this point in your life where you've got this business and you're helping people build their incredible business by being their authentic self. Is this something that you always thought you were going to do, even as a little girl, or what was your journey like?
Yeah, so I had no idea this is what I was going to be doing. Not a clue. Really, once I graduated college, my life is like one plot twist after another in the best way possible. I went to Texas A&M University and I got my BBA in marketing. Not really because I was super passionate, but because I wasn't 1,000% sure I knew what I wanted to do. The only thing I'd really loved since I was little were animals. And whenever I was in high school, I graduated in 99, we were basically told you can be a vet or a marine biologist, right? Like that's what we were told. And I was like, I don't want to do either one of those. So I was like, screw it. I'll go to the business school. What was interesting about that was I graduated, right? And I had no idea. I felt like it was a lot of theory and a lot of knowledge in that aspect. But as far as implementation and actionable, when people would say, what are you going to do? I'm like, oh, marketing. They go, great. What are you going to do? I'm like, I just told you marketing. Is that not a job? I didn't know. And so I went back to work for a company that I'd been at summers and breaks and stuff just to have a job while I figured it out. While I was in college, I danced at a studio and I worked at the studio. And so the weirdest thing happened. I started missing my studio kids. And that's weird because I don't like children. Right. Like any maternal instinct I have all went to animals. I never babysat, never did any of that. But my studio kids were a completely different story. And so in Texas, we have this wonderful thing called dance and drill team at the high school level. We do a lot of stuff, but also perform halftime of all the football games. And I discovered that my alma mater, where I was on the drill team, had an opening. I have no education certification and no education education, right? But I was like, screw it. I'm going to apply. So I did. I actually got the job. I know a large part of it is because I was an alumni, but I ended up being in public education for 13 years.
Oh, and wow.
I was convinced, right? Because that was the first major plot twist for me. I had no idea education was going to be a thing for me. And I thought I was going to retire in education. But in 2018, I really started getting, actually probably 2017, I started getting restless. And I just thought it was because it was time for me to exit the classroom, which I always knew I would eventually do. And so I started looking for admin jobs and nothing was working out, nothing. And the pivotal moment for me, obviously I'm giving you a Reader's Digest version, but the pivotal moment was I was standing in the hallway of our home and my husband, I had just not gotten another job, did an interview. It went great. I didn't get it. And he said, I'm sorry, but every time you don't get called for an interview or you get an interview and don't get the job, I'm happy. And that blew me away because who says that?
Yeah,
And
most
I
husbands wouldn't say that.
right? And I was like, why would you say that? He goes, because you're miserable.
Ah,
That was massive for me, right? The subconscious, the ego part of my brain knee jerked when it was like, nuh-uh, but my husband gave me the most beautiful gift, silence. He said nothing.
mm.
And it gave me that opportunity to go, wait, am I miserable? Because I loved my kids. Like I can't, and I miss my kids almost every day, but I was miserable. I really was.
So, but you didn't even realize it yourself that you
I
were
had
miserable.
no, Cheryl, I had no idea.
Wow.
I thought that restlessness was coming from a place of, oh, I just need to move on, take the
Mm-hmm.
next logical step. I had no idea. No, I didn't. And I was actually talking to someone else earlier today about, so many of us, we have these logical paths and plans when we try to map it all out. And as long as we keep taking the next logical steps, we should be happy, right? And so we
Mm-hmm.
don't even really give ourselves an opportunity to evaluate that most of the time. But no, I had no idea I was miserable, but I
Wow.
was. Unfortunately, with public education, there's a lot of bureaucracy and BS that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason most of the good teachers leave is they get tired of beating their heads against a wall. They
Mm-hmm.
get tired of trying to do what's best for the kids and getting blockaded and whatever for no valid reason. And he was like, I think it's time you start your own business. You've been talking about it. It's time to do it. And I looked at him and I was like, great. The hell am I going to do? I had no idea about that either. I felt like entrepreneurship has always been in my blood, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I'm a self-taught graphic designer. And I was like, well, I guess I'll start there. So I started playing around with just random logos and then custom stationery. And then I was convinced, right? So keep in mind, I've now resigned from 13 years in public education. I took a massive leap of faith. Like it was massive. There was a lot of prayer involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
Walked away from that secure income, that secure retirement plan, and went, sure, why not? And I was pretty convinced after about a month or two that I was going to be in custom stationery. I was going to do weddings.
Mm. Oh, that would be really fun. Yeah, no stress
Yeah,
there.
you think it's really fun.
No, that was sarcasm.
Yeah. I found out very quickly that I want nothing to do with the wedding industry, like
Uh-huh.
nothing. And so I played around more with logos, and it was about that time that I knew there was more to it than that, but I was afforded the opportunity to get a paid apprenticeship through a creative agency in Dallas. And that's really where everything took off for me because I got to really dig in and hone more of my design skills. I got to dig into web design, and I'm a huge nerd, so that really hit home for me. And then I got to really get into the brand strategy. That's when I first was able to name that strategy as one of my zones of genius,
Mm-hmm.
and combine that with the fact that I'm a highly intuitive empath. Creating a brand strategy for someone and then creating the language and the voice and the tone to go with that was something I ended up being really great at. And so when my husband and I moved, I just kept doing, like, I was already doing my side work, but most of that, my business was as a brand strategist and a creative designer. I had the opportunity to pick up a couple mentoring projects with people
Mm-hmm.
that were not new designers, but new business owners. And I realized how much I was missing the teaching and the mentoring part.
Mm-hmm.
And so my coach actually asked me one day, she was like, do you even want to design anymore? Not, not really. She was like, then just do it. So I gave myself full permission to just pivot completely into
Mm-hmm.
that coaching and teaching and speaking aspect. So still doing the brand strategy pieces, yes, but really looking at that from, I combine the brand and business strategy piece together because I don't think to have a successful business, they can be separate. Right.
Right.
Because one feeds into the other, one informs the other. They really can't be these segmented entities. And I've had my own journey of getting, down to who I am authentically and fighting to become that person and fighting to get comfortable being
Mm-hmm.
that person, but also just the knowledge and the experience that that's really the only way to live if you want to be truly happy, successful,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And then and I'm here now.
So I have two things that really strike me. Yeah, it just really hit me. is one of the things that you said is that you acknowledged your genius. And that was to me like, wow, how many people never even appreciate what their, skill, their talent, their superpower is. And to hear somebody say that out loud, especially coming from a woman, it's like, I wanted to, jump up and scream, hallelujah. That was just a beautiful moment.
Right. Thank you. And that's another reason why I do what I do, right? Because I want to give that to more. I do have some clients that are men, but I want to give that voice to more women. I want them to be able to understand and to experience and to know from experience that, it's a great platitude to say that we were all created on purpose and with purpose. And I fiercely believe that, but to live that way,
right,
is very different. And as cliche as it may sound, but the freedom and the joy and the fulfillment that come from you living as who you were created to be, rather than fitting inside a box you were never meant to fit in anyway, is indescribable. And I'm very familiar with what it feels like to be in that box. And I don't want people to feel that, because it's suffocating. And it breaks you down just a little bit at a time.
It just keeps chipping away at your personal power and your self-worth and your sense of self. The other thing that you said that I thought was really cool was about, how you fought to really embrace your authenticity and to live it. And just since the time that I've known you and talked to you a couple of times and followed you on Facebook and seen a lot of your photographs and stuff, you really do embrace that. And you are one of the most authentic people I have ever met. And, it tickles me when I see some of your pictures and stuff, because it's like, that is so you.
Well, that's a huge compliment. So thank you is not really the right word, but I genuinely appreciate that, because I do. I try to be as much of all of me as I can all the time.
A lot of times that's almost it's scary. Because you're putting yourself out there in a way that you're really vulnerable, because people expect certain things from you, especially your friends, your family, maybe colleagues or whatever. And if you start really living your life who you are, it's a big step.
It is. And you hit the nail on the head. It's scary. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there aren't days that I don't question something I've said or done or whatever. I am the queen of like when you, if you send a text or an email and nobody replies and you go over and you're like, oh crap. And you go over that message 18 million times going, are they mad at me? I am a recovering that person, right? Like I still do it from time to time, but I can catch myself now. And the word you said that I think is so important is vulnerability. And so vulnerability is a piece of authenticity. And the other word that we don't talk about as much, though, is it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. You're literally putting yourself out there where people could, just pick you apart, and you're hoping they won't. And that's really, really hard. And it's really, really scary. There's no way around that.
No, there isn't. And it's almost like, you're afraid that you're going to be rejected, especially from people that you are close to, that they'll put you down, or they are going to reject you, or that, they're not happy with you. But the alternative is you're not happy with yourself if you're not living your authentic, true self and being the person that you were made to do.
That is so freaking true. And I will tell you this too. Because you're right. And I just, I deliver things straight, no chaser. I'm not going to paint a rosy picture and say that it's perfect and wonderful. First of all, there's no such thing as perfection. That's an illusion. But if you decide to start being radically authentic, you're going to lose some folks. You are. And I'm not going to tell you that's not going to be hard. When it comes to branding and business, first and foremost, you're supposed to lose people. You're actually supposed to polarize people. Because that's part of your weeding out process. You don't want to attract people that aren't for you and you for them. And you only want to talk to the people who are perfect for you and you for them. And that same thing ends up being true in your personal life. I have lost some friends. I have not necessarily lost family members, but relationships that have just grown super distant. Like we're family by blood, but that's it. But what I can tell you is that I've also gained some of the most trajectory changing people in my life and in my corner that I would not have ever had the opportunity to connect with or cultivate a relationship with had I not been being that authentic version of myself. And so you might lose a little, it's going to be a little scary, and it's going to be a lot hard at first, but to say that the benefits far outweigh the cost is like the understatement of the century.
I actually, a few years ago, broke up with my BFF. And I mean, we were best and dearest friends, incredibly close for 30 years.
Wow.
And how do you tell somebody? Because I was going through a lot of change and a lot of transformation and stuff in a good way. And she was going through a transformation. She was getting darker and darker and darker. So it was like we were getting to polar opposites, and I just couldn't take it anymore because just being around her was insufferable. And I finally did. I mean, how do you tell somebody that you've been best friends with for 30 years that you haven't liked them for the past 15 and you've been trying to break up with them for the past 10? It was awkward. It was uncomfortable. But let me tell you, once it was done, I felt so light, so free. And it was amazing how many wonderful, new, positive, uplifting people came into my life.
Yep.
So I call it's almost like pruning a tree or a bush or something. Yeah. Deadheading the flowers.
No, that's exactly what it is, right? Like if you don't weed and if you don't prune, everything else is just going to die. It just takes it over.
And
I mean,
sucks your energy.
Science, right? So why would that not apply to us too? And depending on whatever your beliefs or thoughts, whatever it might be, I think pretty much in every belief system or thought system or whatever else, it's pretty well talked about and known and even documented. I mean, we absolutely pick up the thoughts and actions and beliefs and vibes of others and the emotions.
Absolutely.
That's irrefutable. And so, it's like, and there's a million different little cliches, right? You are who you surround yourself with. That's actually pretty freaking true, and I haven't had to break up with a bestie. I've been super fortunate that any of my relationships, I have just allowed distance to build, and I just allowed it to be there, and neither one of us have done anything to close it. So I have not had to have one of those, because I know that had to have been a heartbreaking conversation. But the same was true in the sense that the more that because for me, what I recognized is there was a lot of just really unhealthy balance in a lot of my relationships. People that had no problems taking and taking and taking from me. And then if I needed something, they were too busy, or they kind of weren't there, or somehow it became about them all over again. And I'm like,
exactly,
this is so freaking one-sided, and I'm not getting any support. But just like you said, the more I let the distance grow in those and just let it be what it was, the more room I had for other people and for people that, now I can't imagine my life not having those people in it.
Well, I have to tell you, we never did have the conversation. I did exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah, because I mean, it got to the point where I thought, there was definitely some mental health issues here that she wasn't dealing with. And then her husband added to that because it was a very uncomfortable situation. So the easiest thing for me to do, and I used to think, oh man, that's such a chicken thing to do. I mean, I should have just faced it, but it was like, no, it was so much easier and more effective for me to just start creating distance, which was really challenging because we danced together at the same ballet studio.
Oh, wow.
At least 3 to 4 times a week. So what I did was I just went to a different studio. I changed my dance schedule. I didn't return phone calls immediately. I just, kept dragging it out and out. And until she finally, she could tell that we weren't as close. And then she started like grabbing even more. So I just kept that distance going until one day I thought, oh my gosh, I did it. I think we're there. And she actually showed up at my dojo that she wanted to take martial arts classes from me or with me and from me. Because at that point, I was a red belt. I was pretty darn close to the black belt. So that was really an interesting development. But yeah. And so how that ended, she was walking the dog about a month after she was at the dojo, slipped on the ice, broke her arm, and boop, that was it.
Well, and I will say this, just for what it's worth, I don't think that was the chicken way out at all. I think that I, mm, obviously I don't know her, but I think sometimes if we're able to let distance do its job, because there's no way that we can have that type of a conversation without hurting someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can do it without hurting that person, and if it's already a broken person, why are we trying to add to the brokenness?
Right.
If it's somebody that comes back and says, hey, I've been noticing this and this, what's going on? Talk to me. And then they've opened that door and you can go, I'll talk to you, but it might be hard to hear what I have, and if that opportunity presents itself, great. But from my experience, if they just allow the distance to be as well, then just keep going your separate ways. Like, again, it's not even about it being awkward, but why have a hurtful conversation? Because you having that conversation wasn't going to radically change her overnight. Like, that's just
right.
That's not how that works.
Right. And it wasn't my goal to change her. It was just, I would have said, I love you. I let you go. I want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. But that never would have been that wouldn't have happened that way. So,
right.
But, it turned out just fine. And I just couldn't believe just that one person in my life, ending that relationship just made such a difference. And I'm very, very cognizant now and very careful, when I just get the vibes or the little feelies or whatever. So very, very sensitive about, my relationships and, how they're going. So,
yeah. And it's so crazy how one person can make that much of a difference. And you completely illustrated the importance of us having boundaries,
right.
And the thing that's unfortunate is that when we start living more authentically and when we start creating boundaries for our own health and well-being, you're absolutely going to get pushback for one of a couple of reasons. I know a lot of the times people react negatively to those that are authentic. And I firmly believe and know that a piece of that is if they're not living authentically, there's that fear there, right? And it's laying it out for them where they can't ignore it. Like, man, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could do those things, but there's no way that I could. Right. And so there's that fear piece of it. And then, if you're setting boundaries, all of a sudden, and I will tell you this, I know there's always an exception to the rule, but I think if you're setting a boundary and someone reacts really negatively, that's exactly who that boundary was for.
Yeah.
Because the people that are for you, they don't need you to explain why you have those boundaries, right? The people that all of a sudden, well, I mean, you were doing this before, why can't you do it now? Those are your energy vampires, right? Those are the ones that just suck it all out of you, but like I said, I just want people to know, like, these are all what I find to be necessary steps of the process. Doesn't mean they're all easy and you're going to hit some bumps and snags along the way, but man, is it worth it.
So what we're talking about right now are personal relationships, but the same rules apply to your professional and your business relationships.
Absolutely.
So I think that once you can establish that in your personal life, then that can more easily transfer into your professional life. So talk about that, about business relationships, especially between, a client and a coach. And like you said, we are not meant to work with everybody who calls us on the phone, walks through our door. We are not meant to serve everybody because it's going to overwhelm us. And not everybody, we're not a good fit. And I think part of our job is to be able to determine if we are effective with someone, or if, I've turned a lot of people away and said, I don't think I'm the right person for you. And I have all of these other, referrals. You might want to check them out, that they might be a better fit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. And I think too, just as a little side note, before I dig more into your question, it's not just a boundary for you. If you turn someone away, you're actually doing them a service as well. Because if you're not the person that can serve them the best, then they're spending money with you and not getting the result that they're probably ultimately hoping for. They may get a little step of the way, but we're doing them as much of a service as we are protecting ourselves, right? I think the first thing with boundaries and man, and this is personal too, but it is easier in business to do this sometimes. It's all about establishing expectations.
Mm.
And it's about being crystal clear on what those expectations are. So it is a matter of, yeah, sometimes it can appear in legal form, like in contracts or whatever, but especially when you're a service provider, it's very much about sitting down with that person on the other end of the, at the other end of the table or computer or whatever, and going, okay, this is what my program does. This is, this is who it's for. This is what it provides. Here's what you have to give, right? This is what it requires from you. Here are the things that I can and I will do. Here are the things that maybe I can do, but we're going to have to discuss an extra charge or whatever. Here are the things I absolutely will not do. And that can be scary in of itself, because where in personal life we were afraid we might lose a relationship, in business you might be afraid you're going to lose a potential client. But I just have to remind you over and over and over again, that's not your person. And I get it. When we're starting, sometimes we just got to take money wherever it comes in. We got to take clients wherever it comes in. And if that's where you're at, I get it. It's a part of it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to turn down money if you need to pay a bill, right? But at least utilize that experience to learn. Start really paying attention to your favorite clients. What do they all have in common? If you have a nightmare of a client, okay, why was it a nightmare? Be honest with yourself. Was there anything that you could have or should have done? Right? Because a lot of times it goes back to not being clear on expectations. And that's on us as business owners. If I don't clearly outline that for you, that's on me. But then going, okay, then what can I put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again? But really it's about setting those clear expectations, whether it's for a client. And I feel like it's almost even more important if you're going to do some form of a collaboration or some kind of trading of services, right? It's all of that, just being super crystal clear on what's required of each party and what each party is getting.
The collaboration and the doing the trades and stuff, that's a touchy subject with me, because I know I did a lot of
sticky.
It can be. And I've done a lot of trades with a lot of different people I don't anymore. But I have to tell you, there was only one time that I really felt it was an equal exchange of services, and that I was getting as much benefit out of it as she was too. As a matter of fact, her name was Cheryl as well. So yeah, but it was, here's what I think is important when it comes to trading too. If anybody's thinking about doing that, bottom line is that money is nothing more than energy. And that's not me going crazy woo woo on you. Money is a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper. It's a thing, right? But it's in exchange for something. It's really just energy. And so I think what's really important is the energetic exchange has to feel right for both people. And so, whenever I talk about trading services, we definitely talk about whoever initiated it, right? Because typically there's one person that maybe needs something a little bit more than the other, and that's willing. Whoever initiated that, are you interested in this, right? I think it's really important to talk about, okay, is this even possible? And then asking that party, what feels good to you? Yeah. Right now I'm working with someone, that's exactly what we did. I'm like, okay, cool. If you did this, this, and this for me, talk to me about what really feels good for you energetically. Like, you getting X out of this makes you excited. You're excited to work on my stuff. You think you're getting the deal of a lifetime. And 9 times out of 10, whatever they come back with, I'm like, oh, I can totally do that, right? Like I can totally do that. And then also what I typically will do after that is I'm like, you know what, let's try it out for, depending on what it is, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, but let's try it out for this amount of time. Let's come back together and reevaluate and see how we both feel. And then we can decide if we want to continue. And that just gives me a really easy way to get out if I feel like this is not working, because it's not like hiring an employee. Like, I can't necessarily go, excuse me, where's my stuff? Because I didn't pay you in money. But that I had to learn the hard way of, just because I also had to trading services and I did my part and they didn't do theirs. And that leads to some pretty awkward conversations. Yes, it does.
That leads to some bitterness and resentment.
Well, I love the way that you got that out in there. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like that right in the middle of all of that conversation. It was, we'll reevaluate that in a couple of weeks and see how it's going for both of us. And
Yep.
I put that in the vault. I'm going to remember that.
Nice. Well, and what I found too is that whenever I'm able to take the position of focusing on them, I want to make sure this feels good for you. I
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that this is working for you. That disarms people because now they know I'm really not just in it to get what I want out of the deal and for you to
Mm-hmm.
get screwed on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely want this to feel good for both parties.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, like, again, saying, let's revive it, see how we both feel, just making sure they understand that this is a true collaboration. We're in this
Mm-hmm.
together. And if one or both parties isn't happy, then what? Then we don't need to keep doing this.
Right. Right. Great words of wisdom, because that is
Thank
a
you.
really touchy topic
Yes, it
and
is.
very sensitive. And anytime I would hear those words, let's do some trades, I mean, I just kind of cringe and, like, well, let me think about it.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, because, I really do have to stop and think about it. But I'm telling you that one time that one woman did approach me wanting to, and she was a reflexologist, and she wanted to start doing trades with me. And I thought, oh God, I don't know anything about reflexology. I don't want it. This doesn't sound, it just didn't feel like the right fit. And I thought, okay, well, I'll try one and see how it goes. Oh, I was lying on her table and I swear I could hear the angels sing. It was it was such an incredible experience. And, it was just wonderful. So we continued that collaboration for many months. And it was just really very
That's
fulfilling.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, I mean, you're giving us such amazing information on relationships and business relationships, but I do want to get the audience to know you a little bit more as a person, although
Yeah.
with your authenticity,
There it is.
there it is, that they could just kind of see it. It's just flowing off of you and flowing out of you. So of course there are some of the things that you really are very passionate about besides helping your clients, and that is the world of animals.
Yep. I am so excited. And I know you asked me what was new earlier, and I was like, I don't know. Well, I do know. My nonprofit has officially been launched.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, congratulations.
Thank
That is
you.
huge.
Yes, it is. And it is a journey, learning how to juggle both, right? Learning how to, because obviously once your nonprofit's launched, the very next stage is getting money. And that in of itself can and probably should be a full-time job. But so since I was 4, this is literally a dream since I was 4. Now, granted, at 4 years old, did I say the words animal sanctuary? No. But I did tell my grandmother raised me, and I wanted a farm. That's what I always called it, right? And and I knew all the animals I wanted, and I wanted to help the animals, and then obviously as I got older, that got refined, and just but I do that is one of my zones of genius, is connecting with animals. I love them more than I love people. There's no lie in that, because you want to talk about authentic. Animals are authentic. But so it's called The Refuge, and it is going to be, it's founded on rescue, rehabilitation, and outreach.
Mm-hmm.
And so really more than just a sanctuary, because yes, of course I want to rescue all the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Really it's more about it's that rescue, rehabilitation, and outreach, and offering that second chance, not just to animals, but to people as well. And it's about really identifying and cultivating that irreplaceable human-animal bond, right? Because we were placed here as stewards of this earth, and that's a pretty lofty charge, right? Steward does not mean use it to its exhaustion. Steward means to care for. And that's a big charge for us. We are to care for those. We are to be voices for the voiceless. And animals, unfortunately, don't have voices. And yes, they're here for like enjoyment as far as pets and companionship. I'm not about extortion. So if I upset anybody, I'm sorry. But I don't do zoos. I don't do aquarium. I don't do any of that stuff, because it really upsets me and I can't take it. But there are so many parts about animals and working with animals that are so beyond beneficial to us as humans,
Mm-hmm.
And so through that program, being able to, yes, take care of animals, but I already have a list. In fact, I'm part of an organization called the Women's Nonprofit Alliance. And yeah, and they've been helping me get everything set up. They're wonderful. And and it's so funny because every time I would have like a coaching session with someone, they're like, "You're so much further along." And I'm like, because this is literally a dream 36 years in the making. This is not an idea I had yesterday. I've got about 20 to 25 programs that we're going to ultimately be housing at the refuge. Everything from, yes, there's the rescue and rehabilitation, there's the sanctuary piece, but then there's the piece that is for like equine assisted therapy for veterans and PTSD. There will be therapy for special needs folks. There will be, I'm going to contact, we actually have a prison that's about an hour and a half from here. So I'm going to be contacting them. Not the first person to do this, but if you've ever heard of it, I mean, there are plenty of people who take, they're like puppy training programs into prisons. And the prisoners are there to care for the dog and train it. I also want it to be very focused on the education piece, really just educating our community in general about just little things that they can do to help local wildlife, what it really means to care for a pet, why you shouldn't declaw your cats because it's mutilation. People don't know that. People don't know that that little bone, that claw is not just a claw. It's literally the end of our knuckle. Like it's a, they don't know that. And then it being a place of second chance employment as well. So for people that have a hard time getting a job, maybe it's because of a record. Maybe they need some help getting back on their feet. Partnering with the local high schools and our veterinary school and the FFA. I mean, I've got, it's big. It's real big. It's huge. And I'm so freaking excited.
Okay. So you don't do anything just kind of half baked.
No. In fact, a kind of a signature part of my personality is that I'm on one end of the extreme or the other. I do all things in extremes. I'm very animated. If I'm upset, I'm real upset. If I'm angry, I'm real angry. And when I'm excited, I'm real excited.
But that's why you're so healthy and vibrant, is because you just live your authentic self. And you just let it rip. I think that's wonderful. Yeah. But I do have one little thing that I wanted to just remind you. I mean, I'm sure you do this anyway, but as somebody who ran a doggy rescue herself for about 7 years, make sure with the education part, we explain why you don't give puppies as a gift, why you don't buy them in a pet store. And
that's one of the things I want to do on the educational programs is just responsible pet ownership, right? Like it's a great idea. It's always a great idea, but let's really talk about it. Yeah. Let's really make sure you understand what you're getting into time-wise, energy-wise, cost-wise. Definitely what you're talking about. Like one of the things, we have I don't know if you guys have it. It's called Nextdoor app. Okay, cool. So on the Nextdoor app, we had someone not too long ago that posted about having kittens that she needed to find a good home for. And usually there's always somebody in those kinds of posts that jumps in there and it's like, just a reminder, please don't give them to just anybody.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately too, you have people that do, as far as I'm concerned, it's pure evil, using them for bait.
Oh, Lord.
It's pure evil. I want to do a lot of education on pit bulls. I know that there's been so much wonderful information that's come out in the last decade, but we still need more. The people still need to hear it a lot more. Because again, it's getting better. But just recently I saw in the news, I don't remember what state it was in, but instead of saying, it was like a sad story, but there was a little boy that was mauled. And it was by his neighbor's dogs. And instead of just saying by neighbor's dogs, by neighbor's pit bulls, I'm like, people are killing me. Because what people also don't understand, see, this is where I get passionate, and then I'll jump off my soapbox because I know that's not why I'm here.
No, I love your passion. We love passion here on the FemiNinja.
But like with pit bulls, what people don't understand is, pit bulls, well, first of all, here's a shocker for probably somebody. A pit bull is not a breed. That's not a real thing. Because it's a mixture of several of the bully breeds. But what we kind of think of as a pit bull today, those dogs were bred for a couple of reasons. You have some bully breeds that were actually bred as nannies because they were literally so good with children. And you had others, like, again, from everything that I've researched, most closely akin to what we identify as a pit bull, they were raised for hunting bears. Okay. So that means that that's one of the reasons their jaw strength genetically is so insane. And so other breeds attack way more than pit bulls, way more. But the problem is, if a Cocker Spaniel attacks you, it's not going to do the same level of damage as a pit would, because when their jaws lock, I had a friend that raised pit bulls responsibly, and he'd get one of those little rope toys, and he could literally lift them off the ground, and I mean, just swing, and they're not letting go of nothing. But these are also the same dogs that, we have a pit, and when it thunders, my 80-pound pit decides that my lap is the perfect safe place to be, no matter where I am, by the way. Even if I'm in here at my computer at my desk, my lap is where he needs to be. So yeah, all kinds of education on things like that. And just, other things too. I saw an article today, about bats, and because bats have been blamed for so much of COVID, there's a lot of, I don't want to say extermination, but there's a lot going on there. Yeah, I know. And not understanding how many animals are such a vital part of our ecosystem.
Right.
We hear about spiders. Spiders are really good.
Yeah.
You don't have to like them, but they're really good. Bees is my other favorite. I still think that a large population of the world has not truly accepted and understood that if bees die, we die. And that's not a dramatization. That's not me being, because I don't like PETA either. That's a whole nother story. That's just truth. If bees die, not the next day, but but we die too. And just people just don't, because they're not educated. And so things that we see as pests, they're often very valuable parts of our ecosystem. So yeah, I'm excited.
And when we start messing around or screwing around with our ecosystem, I mean, it goes up and down the chain. It's not just one thing you're getting rid of, because first of all, before I go on my soapboxes, I love that you brought up the pit bulls, because I have a really good friend. Actually, she is my pole teacher and coach. And so, I go to her house for lessons and coaching sessions and stuff. So she's got 2 pit bulls, and oh my gosh, I love them so much. And they love me so much. And they are the most gentle, sweetest, affectionate. I'm just going to have to make sure that she listens to this podcast so she can hear your spiel about pit bulls, because she would love it. She always gets rescue puppies and stuff. And so, yeah. And she got, the last one she got was from a home that was not treated very well, but of course the dog wasn't there for very long. But she's like the pit bull whisperer. She's just amazing.
We will always have pitties in our home. And, anybody who's ever had a pit will tell you they're actually the biggest babies.
They are. I know. They're
the biggest. And so that it almost, if it wasn't so just abhorrent, it would almost be comical how much they're villainized, because they're just they're such babies.
Well, the very first time I went to her house, she actually had 2 pit bulls and a Doberman that was very, very large. And, I'm a dogaholic. I have never met a dog I haven't liked. I have been bitten before. I didn't care. It wasn't the dog's fault. It was probably something stupid I did, or something that a stupid owner prior to, had done. So not the dog's fault. But I walked in, and they were in the living room behind a big baby gate. And I was just like, whoa. I mean, it was a little intimidating at first to see these 3 huge dogs. And she's, oh yeah, and they all get along, and they were all females, and they all get along. I says, really? That's amazing. They all get along. And she says, oh yeah, and the cats too. And I said, you have cats? And she said, oh yeah, I've got 2 female cats. And basically, I said, the dogs would all snuggle together and sleep together, and then the cats would get on top of the dogs and sleep on top of them.
Yeah. So we have 6 dogs and 3 cats. Now, our dogs and cats our cats snuggle. Not all of our cats snuggle with our dogs, but they will occasionally. But no, the dogs don't chase them. They all get along just fine.
So you have another pet, and that's the one that I have a hard time wrapping my head around, because if there was one animal, and I'm using air quotes, that I could get rid of or remove out of our ecosystem, it would be, oh, I hate snakes. I just hate them. I know they're an important part of our
They
ecosystem,
are.
our environment. They do really good things. They eat rats and rodents and all kinds of things. But, you know, I don't want them in my yard. I don't want them. I don't want to have to see them. And I especially don't want them in my garage or my house. And I did have one in my garage, not this past August. It was before COVID. And it was like, oh my God, this was a nightmare. My husband was in town, but he was out having lunch. And it's a really long story with a really disastrous, but kind of funny ending. And even when I was a kid growing up, you know, we had a huge yard in Pennsylvania, very hilly, a lot of woods and stuff. So there were copperheads in the creek behind our house, and there were snakes in the yard all the time. And we actually had one in the house one time. And if you want to hear like ear piercing, blood curdling, screaming, you know, because I have 4 sisters, 1 mother, and my poor father was home that day. And it's like, no wonder why he was losing his hearing.
Yeah, no, we totally have a snake. We have a ball python, which is a little misleading, because people say python and you think like gargantuan, and that's not. Half the time I think people are thinking about anacondas when people talk about pythons. Pythons can get massive. Ball pythons are not. They're not like little garden snakes, but you know, they are much smaller. You know, and it's so funny that you say that, because of course my mom was horrified when we got our snake. Our snake name is Monty because of Monty Python. You're welcome. She was horrified when we got Monty. Horrified.
I'm with your mom. I hear your mom.
And she was like, "Why would you do that?" I'm like, "Why is this a surprise to you?" Because when I was in 7th grade, our 7th grade science teacher was an animal fanatic. And so we were in this wonderful like wing of the science like area where there was an aviary, excuse me, for all kinds of finches and birds. There was an iguana, there were turtles, snapping turtles. He had a water snake. He had multiple snakes, all this stuff, right? And one of our major projects for an entire semester, I want to say, was kind of the research and documentation of, we had to pick an animal. And I picked the bull snake, and the bull snake looks just like a rattlesnake.
I know.
They actually put their tails in the sand to make a sound like a rattlesnake, but they are not poisonous. And what you have to understand is, so I'm 5'3", but when I was little, I was massively little. So when I was 8, I looked like I was 5. And when I was in 7th grade, I looked like I was in 4th or 5th. Okay. So I'm this teeny tiny thing of a person taking care of this bull snake. When I gave my presentation, his name was Clark. Clark was wrapped around my neck for the whole presentation. I know. If y'all could see her face, she's freaking out. And then she reminded me of something I had forgotten. I got really upset because I wanted to bring Clark home for the holidays, because we had the opportunity to bring our pets home while no one was in school. She was like, "Are you kidding me?" I love snakes. I think they're so freaking cool. And I don't think Clark had a lot to do with that, because when we think of cold-blooded animals in particular, they don't really ever, because they're quote cold-blooded, so they're not viewed as mammals are. They're not viewed as warm, or when I say fuzzy, I don't mean literally. I just mean that they're not viewed as much as pets like a dog or a cat is, except that Clark got to know me. Like, he knew when it was me opening his cage. They have like little hides in their cage. He always came out. Like, I never had to reach in for him. He snapped at other people. He never snapped at me. And they're brilliant. He got to learn when I was taking, because his cage was outside the classroom, and he'd be wrapped on my arm. And as soon as he would catch sight of his cage, he'd slip his tail behind my back and wrap my other arm. So his half of him was wrapped around one bicep and the other, and he'd pull. So like my shoulder blades are pinched in the back, and I know no one can see me, but like my hands are waving like a T-Rex, and I can't do anything. Like, they're smart. God. I know. I love them though. I think they're really cool. Our snake is super happy.
Yeah. Well, God bless you. I mean, somebody needs to love them, but I'm not nearly as phobic, believe it or not, as I used to be. I mean, I've gotten better.
Yeah.
It was probably the summer before the snake was in my garage, and I was getting the mail or whatever, and it was like, oh, there's a snake in my yard. And, I just kind of looked, and it slithered away and went down a hole. And it was like, hey, I didn't scream.
Yeah.
I didn't yell. I didn't wet my pants. It was like, this is pretty good because I just watched it.
No, that's huge.
It's very, very huge. But then we had that snake in the garage incident. And I'm going to write I got a great story. It's a fantastically funny, but sometimes
you are
sad
definitely
story.
in the majority. Most people, especially most women, are not fans of snakes. I don't want to say most, but there's a very large.
Yeah.
Let me quantify that statement. The people who don't like snakes are far more vocal than those of us that are like, we love snakes.
Right.
That's so cool.
Right.
Yeah, no, I genuinely believe that every single soul deserves an opportunity to live life to its fullest. And for me, animals have souls. And so the only animals that I do not include on that list, and I make no apologies about it, I do not believe in June bugs because they serve no purpose and they get caught in my hair.
Okay.
And they're nasty. And I am actually quite terrified of roaches. I'm pretty sure they're spawns of Satan. They also serve no purpose on this planet. And I don't think some people are like, oh, so all animals get to live. No, but those two.
Yeah. Well, they're insects, so that's really not the same thing.
Well, I mean, because even some insects, like I get it. And I just want to point out, I know you already said this, but for anyone who's listening and going, no, kill all the snakes. They actually are really good for the ecosystem, especially in the areas where you have farmers and things like that, because they eat the rodents and the pests that carry disease and that can damage your crops. And so like rat snakes are a farmer's best friend, actually.
I don't want the snakes to die. I just don't want to have to see
them.
I don't want them in my yard. I don't want them in my house. There's a fantastic park, just, stone's throw away. Just go there and leave me alone. Yeah. So
that's fair. That's the other part. One of the things I want to do with the refuge is I want to do humane, like wildlife / pest removal. So if somebody's got something like that, that they don't eat, whether it's a possum, a raccoon, a snake, whatever it is, if they've got something like that doesn't really belong there, let us come and grab it, remove it humanely. If there's any rehabilitation to be done, and try to relocate it to somewhere that's more appropriate than your backyard.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up because especially with the fires that we had in Colorado last year, a lot of the wildlife was coming, down from the mountains and even getting into residential areas. They were seeing mountain lions, bears, a lot more moose and, which is pretty scary, but what are they supposed to do? The animals are they're in survival mode themselves. So, there was a lot of animal rescue going out and just, because the animal's just doing what it wants to do. And that's the other thing. That's another thing I absolutely love about animals. And I will even extend this to snakes is that, the thing I love about animals, they just react and they go by instinct. They have no agenda. They are not evil thoughts. They're just looking out for themselves and their offspring, some of them, depending on what breed it is or what species. But, they're just doing what they do. And there's no malicious intention like sometimes the two-legged predators that we sometimes experience.
I totally agree. I've always said animals are pure. They're pure. I didn't say that they're pure good, because some are kind of mean and crappy, nasty. But they are pure in the sense that, like you just said, they're literally just being what they were created to be. They're doing what they were created to do. They are trying to survive. They're not even looking to thrive, right? They don't take more than they need. They're literally just doing what they were created to do. That's it. And like I said, that's what I love about like what you said, like, they're coming out from the mountains. Well, what else are they going to do?
Right.
If a dog bites somebody, what did you do? What did your owner do? Because
Mhm.
that dog didn't just look at you and go, I don't like your face, I'm going to bite you. Like, that's not what happens. It's just not.
Okay, wow, we really did segue, but that's a subject you and I can talk about forever as animals. My goodness, I
Yes.
thought we would go on a tangent with dance, but the one thing I really do want you to talk about before we wrap things up is your magical AF entrepreneurs.
Yeah, those are my people. So, entrepreneurs, right? Very intentional about the use of the word nerd in there because, as anyone listening has just found out, my people are people that are so freaking passionate about what they do, they can't help but nerd out, right? These are the people that go off on tangents. These are the people that go, crap, sorry, I just can't help it. No, I don't want you to help it. Like, that's the level of passion that I want everyone to have in their business and for their business. And so I got to create this magical little Facebook group, and it definitely that's the community, right? Like, that's my community. Those are my people. Like a lot of things that started off small but mighty, and it took a little bit, and I don't know what happened between December and January, but it's like all of a sudden, I mean, the beacon, like the call signal for other entrepreneurs is really bright. The group is growing in a wonderful way. So it's not just growing in numbers and nobody's active, right? Like, it's growing. People are getting more comfortable posting their own things and asking for feedback and help, and they're commenting. And it really is just, that's been my whole goal, is to build a community where A, I want to show up and serve every day to the best of my ability. And B, I want that to be a safe place and a community where we're really supporting each other and where we feel comfortable asking questions. I'm looking for this thing. Does anyone in here do this? Hey, I need some help. Hey, I need your feedback. And just having that, because one of the most challenging things about running your own business and starting your own business is no one gives you a freaking handbook.
Right.
No one does. And granted, while I think there are some things that could be in that handbook, a big part of that is there's no one right way to do anything. There are certainly some things that are a little bit more recommended, right? Like, you should really do this and not this. But how we get there and how we achieve that, that's about finding what's right and authentic for you, right? And so being able to have all those brains in there and go, like, somebody says, you know what, I've been trying this and this and it's not working. And somebody else that maybe got outside the box and went, you don't really work for me. And that's what I want. That's what I'm wanting to build with this group. It's just that genuine, true community that just continues to grow and really support each other and getting radically authentic and bold and brazen.
And speaking of magical, I see over your shoulder a unicorn.
You do. It says, embrace your inner unicorn.
Well, how can people get a hold of you, Stephanie?
Yep. So fortunately, it's super duper easy. Everything is more Powell to you. So it's my last name, right? So instead of more power to you, it's more Powell. So it's MOREPOWELLTOYA. That's my website, morepowelltoyou.com. My email is stephanie@morepowelltoyou.com. That's my if you want to find my group, more power to you. That's my Facebook, that's my LinkedIn, that's my Instagram. That's just, it's everywhere. So that is the best way to find me. And you can, whether it's through a DM, a message on LinkedIn, an email, you want to reach out via my website, whatever it is, I would love to chat. If there's questions you have, you just want to connect because you think we'd be cool friends, dude, let's do it. I'm all about it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been so much fun. I always love talking to you, but today you've just outdone yourself. This has just been amazing.
Thank you. I had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
So thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And what I would really like to do is ask you to come back in a couple of months. Once the sanctuary is underway and your magical entrepreneurs are growing even more, and then maybe we can share a little bit more about the AF part of that name.
I would love to.
Okay, because you're just really a lot of fun, and I just love having you.
Well, thank you. I had an absolute blast.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. And remember to find your authenticity and just be your authentic self. And if people don't like it, well, it's okay. There's going to be a lot of other people that are going to be showing up, and they're going to be absolutely great addition to your life. And find your zone of genius. I think that was actually a genius statement that she made, because we all have a little inner genius that we don't even realize. It's deep inside of us. And if you have any trouble finding it, you might want to connect with Stephanie and see if she can help you out. Once again, and don't forget about her superpower. And that is the real secret sauce to success.
And one day I'll come back and I'll talk about that too. We'll get into the science behind all the woo and the magic. And I can geek out on that for hours.
Okay, everybody, she's coming back. You heard it. It's on tape. Okay, so she can't try and get out of it. So, all right. So go look for your inner genius. And thank you for listening. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.